Welcome to the Horror Hangout. I have a bonus ode for you today, so bonus ode Quackson's at the ready. I'm here today with one of the architects of the Dundead Film Festival, Michael Coull. My name, which I forgot to mention until this point, is Andy Conduit-Turner. So, Michael, thank you for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, thank you very much for finding the time, especially I know that we were talking just before we started here. Off the back of Dundead Film Festival, we've had a little bit of time to rest and recuperate after what's been a very busy film festival season in the greatest genre, I must add. Let's begin. Dundead Film Festival, as the name would suggest, is based in Dundee, up in Scotland, where you and I both live. And you celebrated your 10th year this year, correct?
That's right. Yeah. 2011 was the first year, and then we didn't have a festival in 2020 or 2021. We had a slightly shorter Dundead summer camp. So 2022 was our first, full festival back since the pandemic, and it was our 10th festival. Yeah.
And nice to be back, I imagine. Nice to see the cinema full again.
Yeah, definitely. Over the last 2 years, you kind of get maybe used to working from home, and there were periods where DCA was closed and reopened and closed again, but I was really looking forward to, and I really enjoyed having a full cinema. I think Dundead especially, you want to have that festival atmosphere, and that there's a kind of community, I think, that comes with horror as a genre. It kind of generates discussion, doesn't it? So
yeah, absolutely. And some of the films for this year in particular, I know are great discussion pieces, but I know you and I are probably biased on this one, but I think when it comes to films that's enjoyable to watch with with an audience, that audience participation, I don't think there's any other genres that really hit the same notes as a horror film together with other people in the cinema. You don't kind of get that same experience watching an intense drama. Like, I don't need to hear people's gasps of those things, but here it hit the horror things that it really strikes a chord when you see other people experiencing it in the same space, right?
Yeah, for sure. And that's something that it was just great to have that back, and to have those audiences, and to have those experiences in the cinema again, after the last 2 years especially. Really hit home how important that is.
Yeah, and it was my first one. I moved up to Scotland just last year, so this was my first Dundead festival. What a great venue you guys have! I must say, like, it's such a nice space, like good screening rooms, good like attached facilities as well. It was really nice to meet one of our regular co-hosts, John Crinnan. I didn't get to see him as often as I would like to. We got to meet up and have a beer before we went in and enjoyed the screening of Dashcam I was able to attend. And we'll come to that shortly, I'm sure. But really, really nice venue. Like, you guys do not horror things, but you guys do screenings, and you operate all year round as well, correct?
Yeah. Thanks very much. That's nice to hear. So I'll take off my Dundead programmer hat and put on my cinema program assistant hat. DCA. Yeah, we're open all year. We have 2 screens, and we program a wide range of films. Art house, and also some more mainstream films. The Dundead strand kind of continues through the year. We have Discovery Film Festival for young people. It's a busy, for 2 screens, we try and pack a lot in.
You certainly pack it in, and I'm glad you touched on the fact that horror work goes on throughout the year. I know you guys have got a number of screenings that were coming up. You did some Sam Raimi stuff recently, right, in celebration of Multiverse of Madness. But you have some more coming up throughout the year. Is there anything that's coming up in the coming weeks and months that are on the slate already?
Yeah, Dundead fans will probably want to come and see Alex Garland's Men, which we're screening. That's his follow up to Annihilation with Jesse Buckley. It's kind of folk horror. We're also screening. We have a few screenings of a new restoration of Carl Dreher's Vampire, which is celebrating its 90th birthday this year. So we had Nosferatu in the festival. If you enjoyed that, our retrospective strand this year was vampires, and we had Nosferatu, which is 100 years old this year. So if you enjoyed that, then Vampire, I think, is a film that isn't really talked about as much as Nosferatu is, but I think it's fantastic. So yeah, I'm really excited to see the restoration of that.
That sounds great. And then was it the anniversary of Nosferatu that really drove the vampire theming in the retrospective portion, or was there anything else that was narrowly pipped to the post by vampires this year?
Yeah, I mean, I suppose you have ideas, or I have ideas about strands, and a lot of the decisions on what to screen really hinge on what is available and what it's maybe not the most exciting answer, but yeah, it's true. I think what I'm learning, this is my first full Dundead that I programmed myself, is that a lot of classic films that people, you would think people would want to see and that you would think would be available to screen maybe aren't. So even within vampires, there were films which we couldn't screen,
mm-hmm.
even if we'd wanted to. So there was kind of a bit of both. I'd had this vampires idea, so there was a bit of kind of inspiration or whatever, creativity to tie into Nosferatu, but also from a practical standpoint, there were a couple of other ideas that I was kind of investigating. I sometimes think it's a little bit like being a detective. You have these ideas, and you have to find out who has the rights to these films. And sometimes if it's a film from the 70s or something, you have to email about 5 people before you can find out who actually has the rights and whether they can
who can give you permission to show it, and who can, and then I guess get you a print almost as well, so you actually have the facility to be able to screen it too.
Yeah, exactly that. So yeah, there was a bit of kind of both. It was practical in the sense that I knew that with vampires it's an embarrassment of riches, right?
Mm-hmm.
It was more a case of cutting down. I could have picked 5 different films in it, and there still would have been 5 great films, just because
still more to pick up on as well, right?
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, there was a bit of kind of both, and yeah, those ideas, hopefully I can cycle back to them in future. It's one of those things that probably from the outside it just looks like a program, but yeah, in my head there are a lot of decisions made along the way, and conversations that have happened, and things that have maybe fallen through, or that I couldn't get, or that kind of thing.
To kind of go on the back burner for another time, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So
yeah.
How much is programming in general, and talk to me about like themes here as well. Are you kind of influenced by what is the current trend? You mentioned Men is next week. We've probably seen folk horror grow quite significantly, or have a bit of a resurgence in the last couple of years, right? Like, do you think that's continuing? Is that reaching like its apex now? Similar question, I guess, for things like found footage with things like Dashcam. Are these the 2 biggest trends? Are there any others that you're seeing on the rise at the minute?
Yeah, I mean, folk horror, I think, yeah, I think, I think it comes back to that Mark Gatiss documentary where he kind of outlined folk horror and those themes and things. And now I think that was maybe 10 years ago, something like that. And now, yeah, it does feel like there's more films being made in that vein. Found footage, I think, yeah, it's an interesting one. It's never really gone away, I don't think, since Blair Witch. It's kind of paranormal activity have kept that candle burning for better or for worse. But yeah, I mean, in terms of trends, yeah, I mean, for me, the most exciting films being made at the moment are films made by people maybe out with the normal, white male director mold. So for me, like the most exciting filmmakers at the moment are people like Jordan Peele, Julia DeCurno, Jennifer Kent, Jane Schoenbrunn, who made We're All Going to the World's Fair.
Oh yes, I managed to catch that one on the on-demand service as well. So yeah, I couldn't make a screening for that one, but I did manage to catch it on demand. Like, yeah, there's so much interesting new content coming out as well, and it is, I agree, always really refreshing to see some new names or people that don't necessarily fit into the traditional director demographics that we'll have seen for generations now. I think because I think that is for me probably the greatest sin a horror movie in particular can ever commit. Like, I unapologetically like things that are, academically speaking, bad movies, bad horror movies. But I still, I absolutely love them. But I have very little time for a horror movie that should never be boring. Certainly, I think being boring is the worst thing you can do for horror. And sometimes it means treading that fine line between tropes that people love and they really appreciate, but then finding new ways to do them as well. And I think a lot of the filmmakers we're seeing now, like World's Fair as an example, they've taken the screen movie and they've added that new and different dimension to it. There were some movies that we saw out of the Glasgow Fright Fest this year as well that I think were exceptionally interestingly done as well. That there are some really great new different ways of looking at these things coming up, and I think that's something we see again when we see old genres re-emerging. And I think that's why folk horror has been particularly exciting for people in the last 3 to 5 years maybe, because really it had, and there are exceptions to this, but quite a significant fallow period, right, between your big hitters like your Wickermans of the past, and then we have a really quiet time. You get things like Kill List that have those elements to them, but then you see, I guess, like Midsummer maybe is perhaps the most significant, like almost blockbuster level example, but then seeing films like Men, which have just from the trailers like a really disquieting surrealness to them before you've even seen anything. And I think there's that element of believability or normality to it as well, like especially being from countries like the UK where there are areas where not many people live, that have really sort of insular communities that you can be involved with or encounter. So yeah, fantastic, exciting stuff coming out, and excited to hear you guys are going to be screening Men as well. I will get on to some folks in Dundee so we can make it down for a screening of that next week as well. I think, sorry, spoilers for the announcement for next run of episodes if this comes out before this week's episode. I think we're going to cover Men on a full episode next month, so should be a good one.
Great. We do actually have a couple of preview screenings of Men as well, actually.
Oh, nice.
Flag up, which are on the 1st of June. And the 2nd of June, I want to say.
Okay. So
will you be able to double check dates maybe? And
yeah, we can put those in the show notes for sure,
yeah,
just so people can go through, and we'll put the links in as well. So obviously anyone who is, you know, Scotland Dundee based, you'll find those screenings, all those horror fans over there. So I think we've mentioned a couple of upcoming films, and you mentioned the programming in general for Dundead, and like you touched on a preview of Men coming up just now. I think one of the preview screenings that you had at the session this year, I think it's a film that's on everyone's lips right now. It's about to get a wider release next month as well. I think you introduced the movie at the time as well, Dash Cam, when you had your preview screenings of that there. So again, a great thing to have as part of the festival. Certainly a film that's generating a lot of conversation. I think it really hits the zeitgeist, doesn't it? Like the way that Host did from the same director, same writing team. In a couple of years ago while we were all in lockdown. Tell me a little bit about your experience of Dashcam. Like, did it meet your expectations from what you'd heard by the time you got to see it? What are your main thoughts coming away from that?
I think programming this year, we have kind of two strands to the festival. We had 6 old films and 6 new films. So the retrospective strand was kind of vampires, and the new films were all a mixture of premieres and previews. And in programming the new stuff, I deliberately didn't go for kind of pandemic-based movies. I think at the moment, I mean, horror's always had that, right? From like Roger Corman, Hammer, shooting cheap and with limited crew and churning them out. There's an art to that kind of conveyor belt style aspect of the genre, I think. And certainly I think horror filmmakers were very busy during the pandemic. I've seen a lot of films where you can tell that they were made during the pandemic. You can almost see the runner scurrying out of shot after making sure that 2 co-stars are 2 meters apart, kind of thing. And yeah, a kind of a lot of films about deadly diseases and things. And I tried to steer away from that, because I thought horror can do a lot of things. It can be confronting and it can be transgressive, and I think the films in the program were that, but in a different way. But Dashcam was kind of the one film which engaged with the pandemic, really. For anyone who doesn't know, it's about a live streamer who is extremely foul-mouthed. She's fairly unlikable, I would say. She wears a Make America Great Again hat. She kind of makes fun of COVID regulations and things. And it puts her in a situation where, it's a horror film. She comes up against a monster or a demon of some sort. And yeah, it's one of those films that has generated a lot of discussion. It's played a few festivals. It played London Film Festival, Toronto Film Festival, and I think there are a few preview screenings coming up in London and things. And yeah, the filmmaker Rob Savage, he made Host, which I think was a brilliant. It was 50 minutes. It was all set over a Zoom call. It was kind of finding that creativity in limitations, right? And I think Dashcam is a bit longer. It's I think it's still under 90 minutes. It's an hour and 25, maybe, something like that. Yeah. And it's the first film he signed a 3-picture deal with Blumhouse. Blumhouse, who produced Jordan Peele's Get Out, which and for me, like one of the key horror films of the last 10 years or whatever. So yeah, it's his first kind of film under the Blumhouse banner, but it was made during the pandemic, and they had to be quite creative around how they shot it, and I thought, I think a lot of the criticism that could be leveled at it, I could understand if someone was found it irritating, or I think the lead character who is playing a sort of fictionalized version of herself, she's really extreme in her views, and so it is quite uncomfortable. But I think I don't think the film lionizes her or glorifies her, and it does, like you say, it generates discussion, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. I think it's a really good one for building up that discussion. And I think you're right. It leans into things that a lot of films avoid. And I'm taking horror out of the equation here. You see a lot of films which you kind of either have, you assume it's either set pre-pandemic or it's in a world where that doesn't exist because it's a fictional story. But leaning into being very heavily set in what is a real world scenario, it, like with Host, it is something that is very relatable to everyone. And then you take the COVID things aside, for me what Dashcam really is about, it's culture wars in general, right? Things that you agree or disagree with, and COVID is one of those binary issues that a lot of people had strong opinions on both sides. The same is true of, I think, that character overall. And everyone has that friend that's like that, especially with the characters that she meets, and you can see that they had a relationship of one type of thing, and then one person has moved on with their life, and the other person is still where they were beforehand as well. Newsflash to anyone: if you do not have a friend like that, then it is you. Yeah, and it's really interesting as a horror character, and the way that trope is played as well, of this lead character in here. I think if you were watching a traditionally made horror film, this would be a stereotype and an extreme version of a character who you would be waiting for to be the first person killed off by your masked slasher, right? And it would be that archetype, that extreme, almost parody level of character that was getting rid of. But then to stay with this character for the duration of the film, and technically, even though a large portion of your audience, and it's one of these, you'll either be absolutely on her side or this is a repellent person to a number of people, and then to be with this character and to root for them despite what you think of them, perhaps. It's really interestingly done, and also I think from a writing and delivery perspective, as you mentioned, this is a live streamer, so having that kind of flow of consciousness of the comments that come in from the live streams for quite a large portion of the movie as well, really interesting. And it's a film that warrants re-watching, I think, for that alone, because you're taking in what's on the screen, and then occasionally you'll take a look at the comments that are coming along there, and it's a great way to see like a silent audience, isn't it? It's like it's like those extra voices that are down at the bottom there without having that many characters that are live. So really interesting delivery. I was so glad that I managed to come and catch it at the festival, and I think we're going to run an episode on that next month as well, once the other guys have had a few more opportunities to get and see it.
Oh, good. I'm glad. Yeah, I mean the kind of stream of comments, it's almost like a Greek chorus kind of thing.
That's the word I was failing to find. Yeah.
And yeah, I think we're all going to the World's Fair on the Thursday night, and then Dashcam on the Friday night. I think they're two films. They're both screen movies, about women on the internet, but they're totally different takes on that one theme. And yeah, as you mentioned, We're All Going to the World's Fair is currently available to watch on DCA at Home. If you're in the UK, you can watch it.
That's great, and that's a good point to touch on, actually. Yes, so even if you don't live in Scotland, which I know one or two of you don't. So yeah, if it's a bit of a drive to get to DCA, but their programming sounds like something you'd like to engage with, as Michael says, like a lot of their content is available DCA online. We will grab that and put that in the notes as well, so you can find the links to that if you're UK based and that's something you'd like to be able to watch, particularly if you're in the UK and don't live in London, where lots of screenings happen. I know you're really big London, but not all of us live there. So if you want to catch up on some of that content there as well, then it's available. You can check those things out. And again, I guess that also will rotate and update throughout the year as well, as more things might become available too. So yeah, more to check out. I will let you get back to your day shortly, Michael, but I think one more question for you. It's probably too early to reveal themes and everything for the coming 12 months time when you get round to the 11th film festival. But I assume it's things that you're beginning that detective work on now. Where can people keep up with everything if they want to get excited about this early?
Yeah, so we have a Dundead Facebook page where we try and post things that are coming up that we're excited about, and yeah, have a little bit of a chat about things. I think that's, as we've mentioned, that kind of horror community is something that that I think you get at the festival. You know, it's always like a joy to see audience members who don't know each other chatting about the films between screenings and things like that. So yeah, we would like to try and extend that and have a bit of a discussion going, you know. And DCA, our Twitter is at DCA Dundee, and you can give us a follow there. And yeah, like I say, there's a lot of horror stuff coming, and like you mentioned, we just had an Evil Dead triple bill to tie into Sam Raimi's Multiverse of Madness Doctor Strange film. So yeah, we're always looking for ways to continue Dundead through the year, and I'm sure there will be loads more screenings before 2020 is done. 2022 is done. Sorry.
Sorry, the last 3 years count as one anyway. That's fine. Great. So wherever you guys are listening, I tell you what, even if you don't live in the UK or Scotland, Dundee and Perth are real nice. So plan a trip, make it a destination for next time. We'll overtake Cairns yet. So come and follow the socials, get involved, have a listen, join those discussions, be part of those communities and so on. Thank you once again, Michael, for joining me today. For everyone else listening here, you can catch us, of course, on all of your socials. We have the Horror Hangout Board of Advisors on Facebook, which you can join and talk to us there about things you'd like us to cover. Ben has set us up a Twitter now, so some names are taken, so we are horror_hangout_, but you'll find us. You can find me at AndyCT Writes on Twitter and most other places. In the meantime, enjoy thanks for joining us for this bonus episode, guys, and we will see you on your feed again, the regular episode next time. Bye for now, everybody.